The red ships filled the darkness of space like angry stars. 10,000 Draconian warships moved together in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming crimson under the distant sun. This was the largest fleet the galaxy had ever seen. Every ship bristled with weapons that could turn entire planets into dust. At the center of this massive armada flew the flagship Eternal Dominion, a vessel so huge it cast shadows over smaller moons. Admiral Korthvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, his scaled hands clasped behind his back. For 3,000 years, his people had ruled the galaxy without question. Every species they encountered either bowed down or was destroyed. The Draconians were perfect warriors, bred for conquest and trained from birth to show no mercy. Their empire stretched across 1,000,000 worlds, and today they would add one more. The target was a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system. The third planet from its yellow star harbored intelligent life, though intelligence seemed too generous a word. The species called themselves humans, and their technology was laughably primitive. Korthvar had read the scout reports with amusement. These creatures still used chemical explosives and metal projectiles to fight their wars. They had barely managed to reach their own moon, let alone master interstellar travel. What made this conquest even more satisfying was that humans spent most of their time fighting each other. Their planet was divided into hundreds of separate nations, each suspicious of the others. Some reports suggested they had enough nuclear weapons to destroy their own world several times over, yet they somehow held back from using them. Such restraint puzzled the admiral. A truly superior species would have unified their planet long ago through strength. The Draconian scouts had observed human military exercises from afar. They watched primitive aircraft drop crude bombs and witnessed ground forces advancing with weapons that seemed almost ancient. The humans had a few space stations and some basic satellites, but nothing that could threaten even a single Draconian scout ship. This would be the easiest conquest in the Empire's long history. As the Armada approached the outer edge of the human solar system, every civilization in the galaxy watched through quantum communication relays. The Zenthari merchants placed bets on how quickly the humans would surrender. The crystalline Vorthak calculated the exact moment when resistance would collapse. Even the peaceful Eloni, who opposed the Draconian expansion, sadly accepted that another species would join the long list of the conquered. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of desperate radio transmissions begging for mercy or frantic attempts to hide their population centers, the humans did something that made Admiral Korthvar pause. They sent a single ship to meet the Armada. The vessel that approached was clearly not military. Its hull showed signs of scientific modification, with sensor arrays and communication equipment instead of weapons. The ship was tiny compared to even the smallest Draconian destroyer, yet it flew directly toward the massive fleet without any sign of fear or hesitation. A transmission came through on standard galactic frequencies. The voice was calm and measured, speaking in perfect Draconian. "Greetings, visitors from beyond our system. I am Captain Li Jinwu of the Earth Research Vessel Explorer. We welcome you to our solar system and request peaceful contact. We would very much like to talk." The bridge of the Eternal Dominion fell silent. In 3,000 years of conquest, no species had ever responded to their arrival with a welcome. Most either attacked immediately or tried to flee. A few had attempted to negotiate, but always from positions of obvious terror. This human spoke as if he were greeting old friends at a dinner party. Admiral Korthvar found himself genuinely curious. Perhaps these humans were even more primitive than the reports suggested. Maybe they simply didn't understand what was about to happen to them. Or perhaps they were so advanced that they viewed the Draconian Armada as no more threatening than a flock of birds. Either possibility intrigued him enough to grant their request. "Very well, human," Korthvar replied. "You may come aboard my flagship. Bring no more than 3 companions. Any attempt at treachery will result in the immediate destruction of your homeworld." Captain Li Jinwu arrived precisely on time, accompanied by Dr. Park So-min, engineer, Kim Tae-hyun, and communications officer Yoon Da-eun. They walked into the massive docking bay of the Eternal Dominion with the easy confidence of seasoned diplomats. None of them carried visible weapons. and their simple blue uniforms looked almost casual compared to the elaborate armor worn by every Draconian warrior. The moment Captain Li Jinwu's shuttle cleared the Draconian flagship, Admiral Korthvar gave the order that had destroyed 1,000 worlds. Begin planetary bombardment. Target all major population centers. Show these primitives the price of defiance. 10,000 warships turned their weapons toward Earth. The first wave of plasma fire erupted from the massive fleet like red lightning. Each blast carried enough energy to level entire mountains and boil oceans. The Draconians had perfected this opening strategy over centuries of conquest. A few devastating strikes would break any species' will to resist, making the ground invasion a simple cleanup operation. But something impossible happened as the plasma beams reached Earth's atmosphere. Instead of exploding against cities and turning millions of humans into ash, the deadly energy simply vanished. Where each blast should have created massive craters, beautiful sheets of green and blue light danced across the sky like the most spectacular aurora anyone had ever seen. The destructive power that could crack planets was being converted into nothing more than a light show. Admiral Korthvar stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. Every sensor confirmed that his weapons had fired correctly. The plasma beams had traveled at the expected speed and carried their full destructive force. Yet somehow Earth remained completely untouched. Cities continued to sparkle with lights in the darkness. Radio transmissions kept flowing normally. It was as if the most devastating weapons in the galaxy had been reduced to harmless fireworks. Increase firepower, Korthvar snarled. Focus. All batteries on a single target. Nothing can withstand concentrated fire from my entire fleet. The second bombardment was even more intense. Every ship in the Armada directed their weapons at one human city. The combined energy release was equivalent to a small star exploding. Any planet in the galaxy would have been reduced to molten rock under such an assault. Earth's protective barriers simply absorbed it all and painted the sky with even more beautiful colors. Then something even stranger began to happen on Earth's surface. Across every continent, the ground itself started to change. What had appeared to be ordinary hills and forests revealed themselves as something far different. Elegant metal spires rose from hidden underground installations, their surfaces smooth and gleaming. These towers hummed with a deep, resonant sound that seemed to make space itself vibrate. The spires weren't defensive weapons in any recognizable sense. They looked more like works of art than military equipment. Yet as they emerged and began to sing their strange harmonies, the Draconian fleet found their weapons growing less and less effective. Each plasma blast became weaker. Each missile moved slower, as if the laws of physics themselves were being rewritten around Earth. Admiral Korthvar was still trying to understand what was happening when his sensors detected movement behind the moon. Ships were emerging from the lunar shadow, but these vessels looked nothing like the primitive spacecraft the Draconians had observed during their reconnaissance. The human fleet consisted of perhaps 100 ships, each one sleek and graceful in ways that seemed almost organic. Their hulls appeared to be made of a material that shifted and flowed like liquid metal, constantly changing shape as they moved through space. Commander Kim Tae-hyun's ship Harmony led the human formation. As the Draconian fleet turned to engage these new targets, Kim's vessel did something that made every alien warrior question their understanding of reality. When a Draconian destroyer fired directly at Harmony, the human ship simply wasn't there anymore. It had vanished from one location and instantly appeared somewhere else entirely, as if space itself had folded to carry it to safety. The Draconians had encountered many advanced technologies during their conquests. They had fought species with energy shields, faster ships, and more powerful weapons. But they had never seen anything like this. The human ships didn't move through space in any conventional sense. They seemed to step outside of normal physics entirely, reappearing wherever they chose, without any regard for distance or time. What made the situation even more disturbing was how the human fleet fought. They didn't return fire with weapons of their own. Instead, whenever a Draconian ship targeted them, strange things began to happen to the attacker. Engines would suddenly stop working for no apparent reason. Weapon systems would shut down as if powered off by invisible hands. Some ships found their hulls becoming transparent, allowing their crews to see stars shining through what should have been solid metal. Admiral Korthvar watched his mighty armada being systematically dismantled by forces he couldn't understand or even properly see. Ships that had conquered entire star systems were being disabled by technology that seemed more like magic than science. His tactical officers reported impossible readings from their instruments. Some human ships appeared to be in multiple locations simultaneously. Others seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. The battle that should have been, over in minutes stretched into hours, but it wasn't really a battle anymore. Admiral Korthvar stood frozen on his bridge, watching his screens show something that couldn't be happening. Ship after ship in his mighty armada was going dark. Not destroyed, not damaged, just switched off, like someone had found a remote. Control for the entire Draconian fleet. The first ship to go silent was the destroyer Bloodfang on the outer edge of the formation. One moment, it was firing at a human vessel that danced between plasma beams like it was playing a game. The next moment, every light on the Bloodfang went out. Its engines stopped, its weapons powered down. Even the life support systems shut off, though emergency backup power kept the crew alive in the darkness. Captain Choi Min-seo's voice came through the communication systems of every disabled ship, speaking in perfect Draconian with a tone that sounded almost apologetic. "Attention Draconian crews, your weapons are now offline. Your engines will not respond, your shields have been lowered. Please remain calm. This isn't conquest. This is education." More ships went dark every few minutes. The pattern was always the same. A human vessel would approach, moving in ways that made seasoned pilots dizzy just watching. Then something invisible would reach out and simply turn off the target ship like flipping a light switch. The Draconian crews remained unharmed, but completely helpless, floating in dead metal shells that had once been the most feared warships in the galaxy. What terrified Admiral Korthvar most was how gentle the humans were being. Every military doctrine in the Draconian Empire said that a superior force should destroy its enemies completely, yet these humans were taking extraordinary care to disable ships without killing anyone. When emergency life support failed on some vessels, human ships would move close enough to provide power, keeping alien crews alive even as they made their warships useless. Lieutenant Yoon Da-yoon coordinated the entire operation from her position aboard a human command ship. Her voice could be heard on Draconian frequencies, calmly directing her people to ensure no lives were lost. "Harmony, the cruiser Crimson Dawn has lost atmospheric recycling. Please assist. Serenity, move to support the damaged destroyer on sea. Grid 7, their medical bay needs power." The lieutenant spoke about the Draconian fleet like a teacher managing unruly children rather than an enemy commander discussing battle tactics. She treated each disabled ship as a responsibility to be cared for, not a victory to be celebrated. This attitude was somehow more disturbing to the watching Draconians than any threat or insult would have been. Across the galaxy, every major civilization watched the impossible scene unfold through their quantum communication networks. The Zenthari merchants stopped placing bets and stared at their screens in stunned silence. The crystal beings of Vorthak ran calculations that made no sense and broke their most advanced mathematical models. Even the ancient Aeloni, who had seen the rise and fall of a dozen galactic empires, had no reference point for what they were witnessing. The species that had ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years was being systematically defeated by creatures they had dismissed as primitive savages. Worse, the humans were doing it without firing a single shot in anger. They fought like beings who had transcended the very concept of warfare, turning the mightiest military force in known space into a collection of expensive space junk. On the flagship Eternal Dominion, Admiral Korthvar felt his world crumbling around him. Half his fleet was already disabled, and the humans showed no signs of slowing down. His weapons officers reported that their plasma cannons were firing at reduced power for no apparent reason. His navigation crew said the ship's engines were responding sluggishly, as if something was interfering with their basic functions. "Sir," his tactical officer reported with a trembling voice, The humans aren't using any weapons we can detect. Our sensors show no energy signatures, no projectiles, no conventional attack patterns. It's like they're reaching out and touching our ships with invisible hands, then simply deciding what works and what doesn't. The Admiral tried to contact other Draconian commanders, but ship after ship had gone silent. The few vessels still functional reported the same impossible story. Human ships that moved like ghosts, technology that violated every known law of physics, and weapons that weren't weapons but something far more terrifying, the ability to simply make Draconian technology stop working. Captain Choi Min-seo's voice returned to the communication channels, now speaking directly to Admiral Korthvar himself. Admiral, your flagship is the last functional vessel in your fleet. We could disable it as easily as all the others, but we'd prefer to talk first. You came here expecting to conquer a primitive species. Instead, you've learned that primitiveness and power are not the same thing. Admiral Korthvar sat in his command chair like a broken statue. Around him, his bridge crew stared at screens showing thousands of disabled ships floating helplessly in space. The greatest military force in galactic history had been reduced to expensive scrap metal in less than 6 hours. But the real shock was yet to come. Dr. Han Wu-jin materialized on the bridge without warning. He didn't beam in using any recognizable transportation technology. He didn't arrive in a shuttle or walk through an airlock. One moment the bridge was empty except for Draconians, and the next moment a middle-aged human in simple clothes was standing calmly near the tactical station. The security guards reached for their weapons, but their hands passed through the grips as if the guns had become made of air. "Please don't be afraid," Dr. Han said in perfect Draconian, his voice gentle and tired. "I'm not really here in the way you understand presence. I'm speaking to you through methods your science hasn't discovered yet. I've come to explain something that your people need to understand before this misunderstanding goes any further. The E." Doctor walked slowly around the bridge, his footsteps making no sound on the metal deck. He looked at the tactical displays, showing the disabled fleet with sadness rather than triumph. "You came here believing you were conquering a primitive world. Your intelligence reports showed humans fighting with crude weapons and basic technology. You saw our wars, our conflicts, our apparent limitations. Everything you observed was real, but it wasn't the whole truth." Admiral Korthvar found his voice after several attempts. "What are you? What have you done to my fleet?" Dr. Han stopped walking and turned to face the Admiral directly. His eyes held a weight that seemed older than the stars themselves. "We are exactly what we appear to be. Humans, the descendants of beings who once lived on Earth just as we do now. But we are also something else. We are the children of a species that nearly broke the universe itself." The bridge fell completely silent, except for the soft hum of life support systems. Dr. Han continued his explanation with the patience of someone who had told this story many times before, though always reluctantly. 50,000 years ago, our ancestors achieved something that no other species in this galaxy has even attempted. They learned to manipulate the fundamental forces that hold reality together. They could reshape matter with their thoughts, travel anywhere in the universe instantly, and bend time itself to their will. They became like gods, creating and destroying on a scale that defied imagination. The doctor gestured toward the disabled fleet, visible through the bridge windows. "The technology you've seen today is child's play compared to what they could do. Our ancestors could have erased your entire empire from existence with a casual thought. They could have remade every star in the galaxy, or created new dimensions. To house their expanding civilization," Admiral Korthvar's tactical officer whispered, "if they were so powerful, what happened to them?" Dr. Han's expression grew even sadder. They realized what they had become. In their pursuit of ultimate power, they had lost sight of wisdom. They were on the verge of unmaking everything that existed, not through malice, but through careless experimentation. A few of them still possessed enough sanity to recognize the danger they represented. The doctor moved to the main view screen and looked out at Earth, which hung like a blue jewel in the darkness. So they made the hardest choice any species has ever made. They gave up their godlike powers and locked themselves away on a single world. They created barriers not to keep others out, but to keep themselves in. Earth became a voluntary prison for beings too dangerous to be allowed freedom. The implications of this revelation slowly sank in among the Draconian crew. They had not been defeated by a primitive species using superior technology. They had been stopped by the deliberate restraint of beings who could have destroyed them without effort. "But the wars," another officer stammered. "We observed your conflicts. Your weapons are primitive. Your technology is basic." Dr. Han nodded, patiently. "All carefully maintained illusions. Every human child learns the great secret from the moment they can understand language. We are the guardians of the galaxy, protecting it from the one species dangerous enough to unmake existence itself, us." He turned back to face Admiral Korthvar. "Our wars are theater designed to make us appear weak and divided. Our primitive weapons are props in an elaborate play. Our technological limitations are self-imposed chains we wear willingly. For 50,000 years we have pretended to be less than we are because the alternative is too terrible to contemplate." The doctor's image began to fade slightly, becoming translucent. "Every advancement we allow ourselves to display is carefully calculated to seem impressive but not impossible. We let other species believe they understand the limits of what's possible. Meanwhile, human children grow up learning to hide abilities that would terrify you." The rescue ships began arriving within hours. Vessels from a dozen different species came to collect the disabled Draconian fleet, moving carefully through the field of darkened warships. The humans had vanished as mysteriously as they had appeared, leaving behind only the evidence of their impossible victory and a galaxy forever changed. Captain Li Jinwu's voice reached every corner of known space through quantum communication. Relays. His final transmission was brief but carried the weight of 50,000 years of hidden history. "To all who are listening across the stars, we want you to understand something important. We are not your saviors. We are not your conquerors. We are guardians protecting the universe from the one threat great enough to destroy everything that exists, ourselves." The captain's words were calm and measured, like a teacher explaining a difficult lesson to confused students. What happened here today was not humanity emerging as a new galactic power. It was not the beginning of human expansion across the stars. It was something much simpler and much sadder. It was reluctant parents being forced to discipline dangerous children who wouldn't listen to warnings. Across the galaxy, emergency sessions convened in every major government. The Zenthari Trade Federation called for immediate defensive preparations against human expansion. The crystal beings of Vorthak began calculating new mathematical models to understand technology that broke their existing science. The peaceful Eloni requested immediate diplomatic contact with Earth, hoping to establish formal relations with the hidden guardians. But Earth remained silent. The human fleet had disappeared back to their blue world, and the defensive barriers that had turned Draconian weapons into light shows were once again invisible. To any casual observer, the third planet of the Sol system looked exactly as it had before the battle. Primitive radio transmissions continued to leak into space. Weather satellites moved in their simple orbits. The planet appeared to be inhabited by beings who had barely mastered spaceflight. Admiral Korthvar sat alone in his quarters aboard a Zenthari rescue vessel, staring out at the stars through a small porthole. His once mighty fleet was being towed away piece by piece, each darkened ship a reminder of the most complete military defeat in galactic history. But the Admiral no longer thought about his humiliation or his ruined career. Instead, he found himself understanding something that changed his entire view of the universe. The humans hadn't been showing off their power. They had been demonstrating their restraint. Every disabled ship could have been vaporized instantly. Every Draconian crew could have been eliminated without effort. Instead, the humans had gone to extraordinary lengths to preserve life while making their point absolutely clear. They fought like beings who viewed violence as a last resort, not a first choice. The Admiral remembered Dr. Han Wu-jin's tired eyes and gentle voice. These were not conquerors drunk on their own power. They were prisoners who had voluntarily locked themselves away for the safety of everyone else. The humans could have ruled the galaxy 50,000 years ago, but they had chosen exile instead. They could rule it now, but they preferred isolation. Reports began filtering in from across the galaxy about strange occurrences that suddenly made sense. Ancient archaeological sites that showed evidence of impossible technology, then, suddenly, went silent. Star systems where primitive species had been mysteriously protected from natural disasters. Aggressive empires that had inexplicably stopped expanding just before they became unstoppable threats. The humans had been watching and quietly intervening for millennia. They had been the invisible hand guiding galactic development, ensuring that no other species grew powerful enough to threaten the delicate balance of existence. The Draconian Empire itself had probably been allowed to expand only to a certain point before subtle influences would have begun working against it. Captain Li Jin-Woo's final words continued to echo through space. "We hope our demonstration today has brought us another few centuries of peace. We ask only that you remember this lesson and govern yourselves accordingly. The universe is more fragile than you know, and some doors should never be opened." Earth's radio transmissions returned to their normal patterns. Scientists discussed weather patterns and crop yields. Entertainment broadcasts showed humans engaging in their simple pleasures and mundane concerns. Children played in parks while their parents worked ordinary jobs with primitive tools. Everything appeared completely normal, except now the galaxy knew it was all an elaborate performance. Humanity had returned to their eternal vigil, bearing the impossible burden of ultimate power coupled with the wisdom never to use it. They remained the guardians of reality itself, protecting the universe from themselves and ensuring that the mistakes of their ancestors would never be repeated. In their quiet blue world, human parents continued to teach their children the most important lesson any species could learn: that true strength lies not in the power to destroy, but in the wisdom to choose restraint.